Bit of an emergency episode, filming this on a Sunday evening. I had an episode I wanted to get out this week. However, uh, it is the topic that you cannot avoid if you have any sort of technology. You cannot avoid it on your feed. Everyone's going to be talking about it at work on Monday, hopefully the day I get this out. So yes, wanted to share my thoughts on the attempted assassination of the former president. I'm not going to get into the election or anything like that. Actually, I'm going to say one thing about that. I'm not the place for election coverage as someone who doesn't really believe voting does a damn thing. However, it's very clear that Trump's going to win now. And I mean, it's sort of, if you look at it, it's sort of like student council, in a way. Biden was like the popular girl, who's always ran. She's promising, better options for hot lunch, maybe some new books in the study lounge, and that's really cool. That's really cool and all. And then Trump just came in and promised double recess. And so naturally, he's going to win now. The funny thing is, just like student council, real government really doesn't do anything. But that's beyond the point. I was around a lot of family members and some older ladies and gentlemen the evening it took place, or the afternoon it took place rather, and all of them very Republican, very pro-Trump. So of course it was a very, and this isn't to take away from the fact that it was it's a historically significant event, but their savior was just crucified or attempted to be crucified in front of them, you would have thought, which was disheartening, but it's a cross we bear. I'll just sort of stick in the same vein as their savior there. And the biggest thing that they talked about after the fact was his reaction to getting shot. And we all saw the pictures, we've all seen the clips 100 times, where as he's getting ushered off the stage, he's throwing his fists up in the air, he's chanting fight, and he knew the second he came up for air, after the Secret Service got him up and was moving him, he knew when he wasn't dead and he just got shot, he knew the office was his. He knew the election was his in that very moment. And the thing that some of the individuals I was around, they were saying, they were just saying that just speaks to who he is, where his mind was in that moment and all that stuff. And my mind, I said it out loud to one of them. I was like, yeah, he is the fucking professional politician. He is the best politician. Who else on the planet fucking Earth is going to get shot? Stand up and immediately celebrate. Pop off and immediately celebrate. Other than the worst of them, other than the greatest of all politicians, and they're all saying, well, it just speaks to how driven he is, how sharp he is. And yeah, if you're comparing anyone to Biden, they're absolutely sharp, right? But no one thought for a second that, what, that's kind of a strange reaction to have a hole punched through your head, through your ear, and then they get up and pop off. That's not normal, but it's a perfect reflection of what politics is and what the election has become. It is the most, it's unfortunately a really sad reflection of, where those people, the politicians, the president, and whatnot, where they've led us, the condition that they've dragged this country down to. And there are people actually rooting for that. There are people who love to see that. I've never seen people get so worked up in a room about the guy who commands them to hand over whatever percent, of your income, depending on the state you live in, or else, face the bayonet, go to jail. And it shows, yes, obviously the divide in the country where people maybe feel very strongly about a certain candidate, but maybe that's only because they feel even stronger against, or they feel, they hate the other party or their beliefs more. And that was a little disheartening. But I wanted to say that. It really did expose, for me, or, and trust me, I didn't need any more convincing. it wasn't like a revelation that, oh wait, he is just like them. In fact, he is the best of playing their game and at playing their game of who they are. He is the god tier politician. If you were to, make your tier list of like political leaders, as far as influence and as far as playing the game, he's the best. Period. And I continue hearing other people going on saying, well, I don't think he's like, the other people. He never took like a paycheck when he was in office. Well, then why the fuck are you still paying taxes, motherfucker? Like, the debate it completely just evaporates after question 1 or 2. And typically after question 2, they throw in, yeah, but the other side, they're so much worse, so we surely can't let them win, sort of thing. But now we're getting into the election dynamics and voting. Not really interested in that, but really had to just go over that. The shooter, that's an interesting one as well. I was reading that it was his dad's rifle that he purchased recently that he utilized. If you follow the money trail, he seemed to make donations or at least have affiliations with both sides of the political spectrum. Cyberbully viewpoint, obviously someone who's been bullied a lot. I think I read he was a loner. That's a pretty standard thing, it seems like, for shooters as of late. And really looked like somebody who has, been just as averse to touching iron as he is to seeing the sunlight. So, if again, they can call the pillars of the show and talk about all of them in relation to this, but goddamn, go outside and lift some weights. If anything, obviously you look better, you feel better. You won't end up a presidential assassin or an attempted president assassin. Sorry, I'm a little late. That same night it went down, it was had a bunch of people over, and some of the fellas and I were participating heavily in some illicit substances. Where's I going with that though? The shooter. So what happens after? And yes, obviously the election goes to Trump, but what happens after in the frame of reference of our little sphere of autism, I'll just call it, I see 2, maybe 3, really only 2 things panning out. I think things continue on the status quo. I don't think Trump's going to swing for taking guns away or restricting the Second Amendment more than he already has. Again, I've mentioned it plenty of times on the air and off the air, but Trump is responsible for the largest infringement on your Second Amendment rights since the original assault weapons ban via his executive order to ban bump stocks. So keep that in mind. He also dropped an interesting quote that I'm going to bring up a little bit later. And actually, while I tease that, I'm not going to look it up. It's going to take too long to dig around for it. So I don't think he's going to carry on and use this sort of event as a platform or as sort of like the starting block to start limiting or further restricting your Second Amendment rights. I don't think that's happening. I think he knows his base too well. And the shirt that the shooter used obviously proved that. Using the Demo Ranch shirt to sort of blend in with the crowd. An interesting choice. I'm curious. Maybe he was a subscriber. It's just because there are larger gun influencers, obviously. So it was just very odd that it was just that specific channel. So I'm interested to see what comes from that, really. But anyways, I don't think Trump's going to turn his back and offend his base and run as the candidate that's going to really, further restrict the Second Amendment. If anything, knowing Trump will probably turn around and go, thank God there are dudes with guns, albeit only law enforcement. I think he will probably keep things as they are as it relates to firearms in the shadow of this incident. However, the other side of the coin, the other possibility I see playing out is obviously things getting more restrictive. And how that happens, I can see going 2 ways. One, instead of keeping things the way they are, Trump comes out and goes, fuck it, you guys don't know how to act anymore, we're taking them away. And after he banned the bump stocks, I think it was after he banned the bump stocks, His quote was, "I prefer to take away the guns first, and then let due process sort of take its course." So, and again, he's a politician at the end of the day. Your rights are simply poker chips for him to bluff and play with. It's house money, essentially. He gets to use those however he wants to protect his own political clout, and that is all that he sees it as. It is not about doing the best by you, it is not about doing the best for you. It is simply to ensure that he has the most favorable ratings and that he can stay in power as long as he wants. So I can totally see that as a possibility. I don't think it's as likely as him just holding fast and not, upsetting the base. But he can come out and say, you know what, fuck you guys, you tried to kill me, you don't get him anymore. Sure, okay. The other possibility I see is a joint president, sort of the current president and his direct competitor coming together in a show of unity for the nation ahead of the most divided election ever and the most divided we've ever been, to say, you know what we're going to do? We're going to pass quote unquote common sense gun control that we can all agree on. They're going to press both sides of Congress and the House to really come together to get something done, and then something really horrific passes and neuters your natural right of life and defense. That's obviously worst case scenario and the least likely, because I don't think these asshats are going to work together. But if they did, it would be for this very purpose, to disarm the populace as a whole. So those are really the only ways I see things shaking out after this. Again, I'm not a Secret Service expert. I'm an election expert, so I'm not going to go into, polling. I really don't give a shit about either candidate. And I also am not going to really dive too much or talk too much about how that sort of incel was able to climb up on a roof within 400 feet of the former president to take a shot. I've also been reading some things that people were alerting Secret Service about someone on the roof. I also read that the Associated Press, the New York Post, and some other outlet was saying that they got reports that an officer actually went up on the roof and the shooter pointed his firearm at him. The officer sort of backed off the roof, and that's when shots started firing. Not to get too incredibly spicy, but and I don't know the build. I haven't seen the rifle that was utilized. All I know is it's an AR style rifle, of course. 400-yard shot. You got and listen, it depends on the optic you got set up, but 40-yard shot ain't that crazy with a full-sized AR, which is what I'm guessing that it was. Judging by the looks, I'm guessing his dad probably just bought some fuddy AR, but again, I'm thinking that it was some sort of AR with a red dot, so I'm trying to just visualize what this dude had as an optic, or the whole build as a whole. I'm very curious in, just to see what his dad had purchased that he stole and thought he was going to take out the president with. I'm just intrigued by that. I know everyone's sort of nerding out about the Secret Service weapons. Oh, we can talk about the DEI Secret Service hires. Holy shit, what a low point for females in law enforcement. The chicks, posing, hitting the car, fixing their jackets, putting on shades, looking cool after they got Trump in the vehicle. The one who couldn't fucking find her holster to put her pistol. She just kept it out, pointing at the crowd. It's truly, the one hiding behind the stage while everyone else is jumping up. It was a showcase for why DEI and any sort of affirmative action hiring does not fucking work. Now, if you had females who actually trained and beat out the guys to be there, then they absolutely should be there instead of the guys. Period. End of story. That is because that position went to the most qualified. You saw in a real case scenario where the former president's life was attempted to be taken and these chicks could not perform at the expected level. I'm not even going to say at a high level. I'm just going to say at a somewhat adequate level. Absolutely hilarious. And obviously, I'm making light of this. That's not true. The former president wasn't assassinated, even if he was. everyone's still got a right to make light of it, and everything should be funny at the end of the day. But other individuals did lose their lives. I believe there were 2 bystanders in the crowd, maybe 1 bystander in the crowd for sure. I know 1, maybe 2. I thought I was seeing who were an unfortunate success from the killer's part, obviously. But I think that also speaks to one thing that was really driven home in my head during one of the Orion training courses that I took down in Texas. I was like one of the carbine courses. And, you know, we were shooting, everyone was shooting fairly well. You know, everyone had zeroed in optic, everyone's working, you know, within 100 yards. Everyone's hitting the target, you know, no one's really getting many flyers, you know. But the drive for excellence and just consistently hitting the A zone in tight like groups or shooting doubles. And the thing that really stuck with me that kept on being repeated, you know, whenever someone missed the A zone or had like an off flyer or really couldn't diagnose what, you know, was throwing off his aim or was consistently, you know, off, you know, the instructor would tell us every time, like, you are accountable for every single round that leaves the barrel of your gun. You're going to stand trial, you're going to go up in front of the judge, in front of the court, in front of the jury for every single round you sent down out the barrel of your gun, essentially. And you better hope it hit, you know, the bad guy. You better hope it was in the right scenario when you did, because if it didn't and it goes off and it's unaccounted for, that can hit somebody else, it can hit something else, it needs to go in only one place, and that is exactly where your vision is, essentially. And so obviously we now see the consequences for that in the sort of shadow of this event where he shot 6 to 8 shots, I believe, and clearly missed his target, but also probably worst case scenario for him was killing somebody else. I'm going to imagine that was not his intended purpose in this endeavor. Otherwise he could have done it any other day, he could have gone anywhere else. But you see the consequence for lack of discipline, lack of training, and also just being an animal, right? This is somebody who disregarded the natural rights of other people by putting them in danger. And obviously he paid the appropriate price for being an animal. Not soon enough, obviously, as we weren't able to, or the Secret Service wasn't able to prevent further loss of human life. Which is super odd. The sniper team seemed to be looking at him in all the videos that I'm seeing. But again, it is what it is. A lot of talk about it being staged. I don't know. It doesn't have that feel to me. That feels like a mass shooting and Trump wasn't killed. I'd probably be like, okay, come on, that's a little obvious. If Trump was killed and no one else was killed, like a perfect sort of like grassy knoll JFK shot, even though there was a couple shots fired for JFK, I'd probably be more inclined to believe it. But this, to me, at least, the BS alarm isn't really going off, and I'm someone who looks at everything like a schizo and like a true conspiracy theorist, if you will. I always sort of raise an eyebrow and go, nah, something doesn't smell right here, here, and here. And yes, the Secret Service, obviously their dropping of the ball tremendously is the only thing to me that just is really making me go, how do you not secure a rooftop with a line of sight within 400 feet of the former president? That seems like pure negligence. I just thought that's the only thing that stinks to me. I think it's stupid, but at the same time, as somebody who's very anti-monopoly of violence and the state's monopoly on violence, gives me a little hope. You know, we've seen a lot of acorn cops lately this year, and maybe that extends a little beyond just your local police department. Maybe we saw the DEI hires fucking it up for everyone to see on the national stage. So it's not too far the realm of possibility that these people may be losing their edge due to some ideological infection, which is, again, great for you and I. But no, real or fake, my money's on real at the moment. Everything is a psyop to me, but this just doesn't feel like one of them. But yeah, it's just one of those bloody things, right? Because now it's only a matter of time, I think, before guns come back into the purview, right? Because Biden's running on he's going to ban weapons, like assault weapons or guns in general, whatever it was his tweet was, and that's just always been a big focus of his. Even though he hasn't been able to get anything done, FPC and the Supreme Court have been doing an excellent job at slapping everything down as they should, so at a state level and a national level. That's their purpose, and well, part of their purpose. The way I see it is, yes, they're supposed to defend our natural rights, but so many have been taken. I think half of their responsibility now, in my mind, is start returning some of those because we're in a little bit of debt, I say, as it relates to the rights in this country and how the Constitution has been weaponized to take and restrict them rather than defend them. But I digress. So yeah, if Trump died, would there be riots? Would civil war break out? I don't know. It's tough for me to tell, right? I personally am so numb to the political stuff because to me it's comedic content for the most part. I make fun of it. I look at it in like a satirical way. I don't take much of it too seriously for a couple of reasons. One, I find it extremely annoying and tiresome, and two, I can't control it. I can bitch and moan, and I do bitch and moan quite a bit here about it. Because sometimes it gets to me. Well, no, not sometimes. A lot of the times it does get to me because I can't control it. But at the end of the day, when I go to bed, I realize I can't control it. So I have to not stress about it because stressing about it is just going to waste my time and make me die sooner. And control what I can control. But no, at the end of the day, I don't think Trump getting assassinated would have kicked off civil war. Unless the news told him to. And it had to be both sides of the news really kicking off, I think. Because again, if you think about it, we're just finding out now that Biden is too old and stupid, or stroked out rather, to do the job. It's the end of the fucking term. Like the election is just a couple months away, and just now people are going, yeah, you know what? I'm not sure if he's really got it in him anymore. And that's only because the media did a 180, and now they believe the propaganda that they're being fed. So the propaganda is important. But no, I don't think it would have kicked off a civil war. I think you would have seen pockets in certain states and communities really kicking off. But it wouldn't have been enough, I think, to really, light the powder keg, if you will. And that's a good thing. Again, there are horrors beyond comprehension if civil conflict were to kick off. And if you're anyone who spent any amount of time watching the combat footage from Russia mostly, Russia and Ukraine, the Israel conflict is also pretty ugly, but I think just the raw nature, the brutal nature of what's happening in Ukraine, that's what it's going to look like. It's going to just be pure horror. And again, we went over the death toll, right? The Civil War death toll remains to this day exponentially higher than any other war we've been in. In fact, if you combine, so take the top 10 deadliest wars for Americans, combine the top 9, below the Civil War, and you're still like another world war, I believe, short in American deaths before like you get to Civil War figures. So that's something you really, really need to strive to avoid and not pray for, because chances are if you are someone who's begging for it, you're probably one of the first to go because you're probably a moron. But I think people do root for it or hope for it because I think at a subconscious level, to varying degrees, obviously, people may realize that if it gets to that, people have come to the conclusion that, okay, things are actually bad, and like no one's really going to pretend that, like their side's got it figured out, or maybe they, again, just speculating here, but I do think that it is obviously at the high, the divide, the temperature level, everything, tension, stress, like is at the highest it's ever been. Former president just got shot in an election, coming right up, and a lot at stake. We are warring with two different nations via proxy or direct. I don't even know at this point. Definitely with our dollars, though, and with our missiles, with allies, or just the straight up, other side of a table there on these wars are nuclear capable. So yeah, a lot at stake, a lot hanging in the air. On top of that, people can't even afford homes and groceries. Yeah, a lot to be stressed out about. Obviously, don't take a pot shot at the former president. I think the way to go about it, obviously, that's somebody who has lost all control in their life and just doesn't know what the fuck to do, and they're mentally ill, and so to them, that sounded like a viable option. But I don't want to keep saying a broken record when I sign off on these episodes coming up to the election just by saying, control the controllables, do things that make you just happy, man. Find a way, if you find yourself spinning out, do something fun but healthy, or maybe just have a fun thing, like me and the fellows were into bourbon and cigars, and so we'll partake in that like we did last night. Um, you gotta have hobbies, you gotta have friends, but you gotta find things to do, that make you happy on your own, because you are with yourself more than anyone else. When you're alone, you're gonna be alone more than not, unless like you're married. Likely you're probably with your wife and family more than anyone else. You're probably not really alone, but even still, in your own head, you got a monologue, right? You got to find a way to make that monologue an enjoyable one and a happy one. I think most of the time, and you can tell the people who do that, and you can tell the people who don't do that. Now, you can absolutely tell the people who do that to an obnoxious level, and you kind of wish that they were depressed and ready to go down, the rabbit hole the other way. But I much prefer to be happy and maybe a little carefree in certain scenarios, especially scenarios where I don't really have any sort of say or control over the matter, versus being strung out and miserable and pissy, because no one's having a good time at that point. No one really wants to be around people at that point. So yeah, the election's coming up. Vote or don't. You have the freedom to do either. Might I suggest some reading though in your trying times if you would like some guidance? I'll give one just normal, I think, book outside of the political spectrum, if you will, and that's The Practicing Stoic. That's sort of the book that I first read that got me into Stoicism and really helped create a framework in my mind about, how to look at things in life, how to attack things in life, and it provided a solid foundation that I lean on time and time again. And especially when things are the way they are now, I cannot recommend it more for anybody who's just trying to make sense of how they feel or what's going on in the world and how they should think about it and what they should do. The Practicing Stoic is excellent. And then No Treason by Lysander Spooner. There's a whole section on voting in there. It's incredibly relevant. I highly, highly suggest you read it. Look into who Lysander Spooner was as well. I think that's very important to understand the context, to see who he was and when and why he wrote this. Top 5 read for me. And it's free. It's a PDF. You can just look that one up. The other thing is anything from Tolstoy. Look up anything from Tolstoy and read it. You can find so many PDFs of his works online, his anarchist works online, because obviously he made a lot of really famous books as well, but his anarchist works are stupendous in my mind. I know I've talked about him a little bit, but to sort of reiterate, his flavor of anarchism is sort of the Christian variant, if you will, but it's not necessarily the Bible-thumping, traditional sort of Christian Catholic beliefs that he peddles. It's Christian in that he is just for absolute peace. No violence, any violence. I don't even know if it's a last option for him. He is so anti-violence, but very much anti-state at the same time. And so it's a very interesting read to sort of break down and understand how he talks about ways and methods to go about rejecting and resisting the state without any sort of like physical confrontation or conflict. I think that's good too, because you need to be armed with those methods. You need to understand what those are and those mindsets, because again, like I mentioned, it's in your very best interest to not want to start, a physical conflict about these things. It's in everyone's best interest. But no one really knows how to go about doing that. It's a very complex topic and a very interesting problem when you think about it. And Tolstoy does a very good job at putting it to paper. And again, he influenced Gandhi, so he's doing something right. But anyways, quick, short episode, somewhat of an emergency episode. Had to get my thoughts out there on this. President Trump coming up this year, it looks like, so long as some other gnome-looking motherfucker doesn't come along and finish the job. Stay fast, though, you know what you're lacking, whether you will admit it consciously or not. Somewhere in your brain, you are aware of the areas in your life that you need to work on, so I suggest you work on them. I'm saying that now as I'm standing over a gun I'm about to clean and a Clips belt I'm ready to tinker with a little bit more and tweak to my liking. But yeah, next episode I think it'll probably be a group episode. I pitched it in the chat. I got a couple of guns that are in desperate need of a deep cleaning. So we're going to try to get the boys together, sit on the patio or on the table here and just all clean our pieces for a night and enjoy some cigars and some whiskey out on the porch and hopefully get an episode in there. A more light, a fun one. We'll probably joke about this some more. We receive some more news about it. But until then, stay metal. Thank you.